Today we're going to be making a rustic floating shelf. Rustic is, any rough cut lumber like this. So let's get started and wish me luck. Now, the key to a floating shelf is its frame. Depending on what you're wanting to put on your floating shelf, that's what I would accommodate the frame for. The frame mounts to your wall. Now, this particular floating shelf is going to have a satellite receiver that is going to be placed on top of it. So you kind of want to beef the frame up a little bit. Now, the mounting plate is going to be 2 inches thick. If you choose to build one, if you're going to set picture frames on it or whatever, you can go with a 1 inch backing frame or a 3/4 inch backing frame. Now the rest of the frame is going to be built out of 3/4 inch material. Now when you're putting your frame together, you want to make sure that you use glue and screws. So I made my way over here to the miter saw to start cutting the frame. The backing frame, which I'm going to cut first, is 36 inches long. So I'm going to make this cut right now. So I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to start cutting out the rest of the frame. So I just come from the miter saw station. I've cut the backing plate, which is the thick piece. I've cut the 2 sides, and I've cut the front plate. And since this shelf is, long, 36 inches long, I'll be adding a centerpiece to it. Now, I'll work that out when I start building the frame, and then I'll go over there and cut it. Because you'll have to have an inside to inside dimension. So anyway, let's get going. Okay, I've got my frame already cut out. Went ahead and cut out my centerpiece that I was talking about. So how we're going to put it together is we're going to use pocket screws. Now, if you're using pocket screws, they have several applications that they're good for. Some people like them, some people don't. I use them a lot, and there's sometimes that I don't use them, but they're pretty good for most applications, especially for putting things together. Now, when you use pocket screws, some people use glue, some people don't. I'm one of those that do and don't. So, anyway, when you're using pocket screws, make sure that you mark your sides where you want your pocket screws to go in. That way there's no confusion. So, here we go. And that's pretty much how you do pocket screws. The screws are hidden. Some applications, if your screws are going to be exposed, and if you're painting, I would use like wood plugs. And you can buy wood plugs that are specifically designed for these holes. So let's get started on putting the frame together. Okay, start putting the frame together. Now, I know earlier I said, you know, don't use brad nails. Now, in some applications you have to use them, but it's to only stabilize the workpiece until you get the screws put in place. And it helps keep everything stable. So we're going to apply a little glue. And always remember, you know, stuff didn't come apart because it had too much glue on it. So, but if you do this, you need to make sure, this is going to be kind of awkward, so you need to make sure that you don't place it in where you have your screws going in, so your screws will hit that. Make sure everything is nice and flush, and go ahead and put you a couple brads in there to hold the workpiece steady. Whoops, forgot to get my screws up. So, we're going with 1¼ inch pocket screws. They're a pan head screw, which they hold inside the pocket real well. Like I said, make sure everything's nice and flush. Turn that drill down a little lower. All right. And see, pretty much how it goes together. Okay, now I've got the frame built, so on a floating shelf, what you need to do is when you get your frame built, then you have to build a box that slides over it. So your box, the inside of your box needs to be the outside dimensions of your frame that you're going to mount on the wall. So I've got my top panels cut and I've got my lower panels cut. Now I'm going to cut my side panels. Now the side panels of the box are going to be 3 1/4 inches wide. So let's get cutting. Alright, whoops. Now we got my side panels cut. I also went ahead and rip cut my front panel. So I'm going to start working on putting the box together. Well, here I am. I'm fixing to start gluing my panels up for my bottom panel, the bottom of my box. So what we're going to do is we're called edge gluing. So you want to match your boards up the best you can to have less gap as possible. You want to use a good wood glue, and glues today are very, very strong. So let's just start gluing these edges up. Now, normally you want to kind of use a glue brush to spread this glue out, but I don't have any. I run out, so I have to get me some. So I'm just using what the good Lord give me and my finger. Now you want to make sure you get plenty of glue on these joints. You want it completely covered in glue. Like I said before, you can never use too much glue. Now when you go to clamp these up, you're going to have squeeze out, but we're not really going to worry about the squeeze out. So when you're doing this, you need to make sure you get all your sides even. Normally I cut them a little longer than what I need, then trim them off, but I wasn't thinking, didn't do that this time. So you want to clamp these up. Just start tightening them little by little to each side or to each clamp. Now you can't over clamp, because what's going to happen when you over clamp, your boards are going to do this and this. So you want to get just enough. If you're working with recycled lumber, then they're gonna bowie anyway. And also, you don't want to tighten this up too tight, because your boards are going to move with you a little bit. Now you're going to have a little squeeze out when you go to clamp these together, so what you want to do is take some warm soapy water, or it could be cold soapy water, it doesn't matter, and you sit there and just scrub it, and all the glue will come off. But you got to do it while the glue's wet. If you try to do it after the glue dries, then it's not going to come off. If all of it doesn't come off, don't worry about it, because you can get it with a sander. Alright, now we're start back putting the box together again. So we got the two sides and the front piece. Now when you're selecting out a front piece, which naturally that's going to catch your eye more than anything else. So what I've done is I selected my front piece that I like the most. Now when you make things rustic, it's very forgiving. It doesn't really matter about a few cracks, or just like in this case, you'll see right here, if the lighting is good enough, see all the saw marks, which there's a little bit of graying in the wood too, and that's what you want. Now if you're going to stain something, if you're going to stain it, you can leave it in rough shape, which I'm doing this to match the inside of where this is going. So I prefer a little bit of gray in my wood. If you're going to paint it or stain it, then you don't really have to worry about it. You know, whichever one you're going to do. Now, I'm going to put these together using the same way I put the frame together, and I'm using pocket screws. Little helpful hint. This project that I'm working on, it's like I said, it's rustic floating shelf. Now, normally you don't want screws exposed, but in case of this project, you really don't mind as much. But you know, what I'm using the screws for is the top, and the top's not going to be seen at all. So I'm not really worried about that aspect of it. So here's what I've done anyway. So I laid all my screws out and left the heads exposed. I just laid them out on a scrap piece of wood. What I've done is I took spray paint. Now, you can use any kind of spray paint you want. This particular kind is Rust-Oleum. Now, the screw is actually a tan screw. So I didn't want a tan screw to be seen. Anyway, so what I've done is I took and painted the head of the screw, and now it's brown. So, which that will match my workpiece. Here's the final product. It's a floating shelf. The key to the floating shelf is the open back. Now, what you do is after you mount your frame on the wall, your box that you built slides over your frame. Like so. Now you'll slide it all the way up against the wall. I'm leaving this out a little bit because honestly it'll be a pain in the neck trying to get out. Anyway, that's your final product. I enjoyed the build and I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe. Thank you.